Hey guys, I'm beginning a couple of questions about how I made this compressor rig. This video is about how this is actually done. What it does is it is a small compressor that will pump up air up to a certain PSI and then goes out through a quick disconnect for couplered or likewise couplered air blasters. Um, the way it works is based off of Spence design. This is just a 12 volt. There's nothing special about this model at all. I think I've seen maybe 6 or so similar compressors. They go up to 125 or 150 psi. Run off 12 volts, I think 14 amps as a general specification. And they usually come with a regulator that ends right here at this end, and a line out, which is what this actually is right here, that goes into whatever you're trying to pump up, with a couple of other adapters at the end, so you can use it for your bike or to inflate beach balls, tires, etc. So the general sense of how this works is this would go into your car's accessory port. Right now it's got an XT60 on it. Those 12 volts would go into your compressor. The actual piston head is right here. This whole body part being the motor. The piston head goes up and down from here. The air gets compressed through here. This is a plastic grate that goes over a heat sink of sorts, because whenever you're compressing air, it does get hot. The air would shoot out right here, and since it is in line with this, it would tell you what pressure was being pushed back out. It does have a off-on switch right here. There is no regulator stock, so it will just keep pumping until it either pops off, dies, or it loses pressure on the other end. But the way this works basically now is the line out goes into a switch, which I have zip tied on this side right here. I've seen let me get you in frame. Right here, this black piece, you can kind of see there's two spade connectors at the end, and then it goes into a little adapter right here. Will go on at 90 psi and stop at 120. It's got a diaphragm on the bottom that essentially when enough pressure hits it, it clicks just like a micro switch, and then it stops until the dropped voltage or the dropped psi. The other end, since it's just branched off in a T fashion, goes to this threaded portion, which is a regulator, which right now reads in bar, I believe. And this regulator will regulate anything between 0 and 150 psi. So this end right here goes to your blaster. This is a 1/4 inch, I believe, adapter piece I just got off of Amazon, and the rest of it is kind of based on what your parts are going to come through. If you are going to start this, the first thing I would do is order your compressor, because it is probably not going to be standard. I know Spence, when he did his from Spence Modworks, I hope that's the channel. I am so sorry if I'm wrong. His was actually threaded right here. Mine had a barbed hose, which is maybe that long right here. It cuts off pretty closely, because I can't really feel the hose right there. Hopefully, unless I actually cracked it, in which case that might be an issue. But there's a barbed hose that goes around there, and then it's just clamped on. I would leave that. If you know it's a barbed hose, just leave it. It's easier to do this than to try and fit something else on, especially because stock is probably going to have a good seal on it. I actually just re-crimped this back on. You can kind of see the stock crimping, and then hot glued a little bit around it. Hot glue is not a very good sealant, but because it was so little, it was enough to keep it in, the air from escaping. And then right here, I found on mine was about 1/16 of an inch threading. When you guys are dealing with threading, there are a couple of standards. NPT, I believe, stands for North American pipe threading, and then there's also BSP, which is the British standard. Some, if you go on eBay, some are just labeled as PT. Those, from what I've gambled on, I've usually gotten NPT back. And I would first get your regulator. First get your compressor, then get a regulator. See what will adapt into your regulator. Usually once you start getting into these, it'll tell you, hey, we take a 1/2 inch NPT threading, and the actual dial itself that comes with it, or the outlet that it goes through, which is going to be right here on top, is a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch or whatever it is. But essentially all you need to do is match your threadings together with some Teflon tape in between, and this will work fairly easily. You pump the air through here. It kicks on because when you start it there, it's below 90, so it's on until 90. Once it hits 90, it is operating until it hits 120. So 120 psi. If this is sealed, right? Imagine this is at the end of your tank. Stop once it hits 120. Now your regulator takes anything from 0 to 150. So I have it set for about 2.5, 3 bar right now. Somewhere in between 30 and 40 psi. I'm not going to do the math right now. But you regulate this so that your input doesn't matter, but your output on this end will be whatever you set this dial to. So for instance, right now, let's, for the sake of it, say 40 psi. 40 psi is about a standard you'd want to use for a war. I think a 2K can probably take its stock. As long as this is sealed, the maximum pressure that's coming out of here is going to be 40 psi, which means that 40 psi this way and 40 psi this way isn't going to go anywhere. So that holds it. Your regulator is still receiving that 120 psi in this little air chamber right here, but since you have the equal force, the stress is right here. And then at that point, this switch kicks on and you're done at 120. Once you release your air tank, you now have 0 psi in this end, which means that whatever 40 is a little bit right here starts to continue through, which means that this regulator has less air on this side, so that pushes through. That means the pressure drops over here, so your switch kicks back on because your pressure dropped, and then the whole cycle continues. It is technically an LPA system. Should work with any kind of HPA system as long as you have that regulator in between. The reason why I say it's LPA is because the highest pressure this ever sees is 120 psi. There's no secondary tank here that's somewhere between 3,500 psi to 4,500 psi. The downside is you have slower shots in between. If you're doing a bolt action, this shouldn't matter for you because you're going to have to rack it in between. And by the time you've done that, you probably have another shot going. If you're doing something hoppered, this is probably not your kind of deal because hoppers are true semi-auto. You're going to go through a lot quicker with more consistency as well. But for those of you guys who just don't want to pump a small air blaster anymore, this is a very easy way to do it. As long as you have a correctly rated LiPo for it. I will say that I've been trying this on a graphene 1000 milliamp hour 3S, and I can get a couple of battles out of it, but I'm fairly worried that I need maybe a 2K to 4K amp hour battery. As long as you have a LiPo, which most of us already do, you can do this and there's not going to be any issues. I guess that's pretty much it. If you guys need any help on the parts list, I'll try and leave one below what I used. Again, it's going to be a little bit different depending on what you get for a compressor. The compressor costs somewhere between $20 and $30 on eBay, Amazon. There's a couple different models that are all the same. The rest of this is fairly cheap. I think the switch itself is going to cost you maybe $8 to $10. The regulator, actually this one right here, is somewhere between $4 and $6. I got a set of 2 of these quick connects that are for female, 3 male, and some other adapters for maybe 10 or 15, and then a hose and tubing and stuff like that. It's all just matching threadings to each other. It's not very hard to do, but the payout is really nice. Hopefully when I get my aluminum tank in, I'll be putting that into a long strike just because it seems like that's what everybody does, and I think it looks pretty cool. Um, and I'll get some gameplay of this. The Titan is just too long of a reload for it. It's probably an HPA system. As far as wiring your blaster goes, it's a lot easier. All you need is, if you're going to use stock internals as far as the switch goes, make sure you get a one-way valve to put at the male end of wherever you're attaching your blaster to, because if not, and you want to retain the ability to pump, you're just going to create a pump out of your blaster. You can put these in line with pumps. It's very easy. If you buy the right adapters, T-fittings basically is all you would really need, because in one-way valves. This way you're not trying to pump in air from here into your actual pump. So I hope I've made this somewhat clear. If you guys need additional pictures, feel free to message me. I'll get back to you as I can. Again, this is just kind of jank, but it's effective and it works. And it's super fun not having to pump anymore.